What's going on, guys? Welcome back, and today I am going to be talking about the final two episodes of The Bad Batch, or at least of Bad Batch Season 1, because Season 2 has now been officially confirmed, which I am very happy about. I'm glad that we're not just ending it at one season. But let's get started with Episode 15, the first part of the two-part finale, Return to Kamino. So, starting off with episode 15, the penultimate episode, Return to Kamino. This episode was just crazy. So I'll do kind of the quick recap as per usual. Crosshair and Hunter are being transferred to Kamino. The Bad Batch are going to rescue him, obviously, off of Kamino. And because of the comm signal that Crosshair is using to draw them in, Hunter's comm signal, obviously. So they do arrive. They end up having a confrontation with Crosshair, where it is revealed that he feels betrayed and as if they have left him behind. He does end up working with them briefly, but it is revealed that his true loyalties lie with the Empire because he removed his inhibitor chip. It was removed at some point in the season, and that he's basically been acting on his own free will for at least a majority of the show. So they have a standoff, and Hunter ends up stunning him, but they do take him with them towards the end of the episode. And the Admiral Rampart contacts Tarkin, and Tarkin orders Kamino to be destroyed. Or he says, "You may fire when ready," because he has to say that in everything for some reason. It's kind of one of those lines where it gets a little bit annoying, but because it's like, okay, we get it. He said that in the movie, the original movie, and now he says it in everything, but, they bombard Kamino, and the city just sinks into the water, and that's where it ends. That's where we're left off. So, just kind of going over what I liked, I thought the episode was very, very well handled. I'll start off with the negatives, because I actually do have a few little things that I want to kind of point out. The first one was, I don't know why they left Gregor behind. Like, I guess Gregor didn't want to go along or whatever, but they're just like, Wrecker's just like, "I left Gregor with Sid." And it's like, but wouldn't you want to bring him with you? Like, he's a useful ally. I'm sure he'd be willing to help rescue Hunter, since he was the one who stuck his neck out for him. Like, he's an honorable guy. He's a clone. He has that sense of nobility to him, so I don't know why they wouldn't bring him along. But, hey, I guess they want to get there quick enough so that he doesn't get executed or something, so I guess it's reasonable enough. It's just kind of a little nitpick. Secondly, there's this really weird part when they end up arriving at Kamino, and they finally track down Hunter's comm signal underneath the training arena from the first episode. And they're like, "We're gonna go up through the floor, not through the main door like Crosshair would predict." And it's like, wait, guys, but he would predict you to do the unpredictable thing. That's your whole thing. You're the Bad Batch. You always do what people least expect. But Crosshair knows you, and he's shown that in the past. Like, Hauser points that out in the Ryloth episode, that, he always predicts them. Like, he knew they'd be going out the opposite door, or he knew they'd be going out that door, and that it was all rescue mission for Cham Syndulla, and that the destruction of the, facility was just a distraction. So, like, that then should have been their hint that obviously he's going to, like, predict that we're going to do the unpredictable thing. So, honestly, it might have been a little bit better for them to just go through the main door, but, they had to be in that spot so that you could have that cool moment later when Crosshair shoots all the squad members. So, I guess it's okay, but just that line from Tech where he's like, "We will go through the other way, unlike the main door, which he would predict." I'm like, no, but he's probably predicting you to do exactly what you're doing, and he does, because he has all of them in position in the exact spot where they arrive. So it's like, obviously he predicted you to do the unpredictable. So, it's kind of funny. But those are like minor nitpicks. I really like kind of the fact that they gave credence to a lot of things throughout the show that happened. Omega reveals that she was there when the Bad Batch were created, and that like the people that were the most like her, that she felt were the most like her, they were taken away from her, and she didn't really have true like family. She didn't feel like she had true family. She just had Nala Se and stuff like that, and the other Kaminoans. But she's just been locked up there. She didn't really ever have a true family, and the one thing that she felt could be that family was taken away. And it adds a lot more, it adds more layers of emotion to that first episode when they're leaving, and when they're trying to ignore her, and she's trying to get their attention and get in their good graces and hang out with them because she knew them, she remembered them. It adds that extra layer to it, which I really appreciate. That that's why the character was so desperate for friends, for a family, really. And I really like that. It adds a lot of layers to her character. And yeah, it just, it adds more to everything that's come before it. I really appreciated that, the fact that she's been there longer than them, right? Because she is made up of unaltered Jango Fett DNA. Just like Boba Fett. So she and Boba Fett just age naturally. So she's probably like 10 years old. She was probably created around the time Boba Fett was, right? Or like, I don't know if she's 10 years old, maybe like a little bit older than that, but she's probably around the same age as Boba Fett. Maybe a little bit younger, but like still, they were probably created around the same time. She was maybe created a little bit after he was, but still, either way, they're probably around the same age. And they do age naturally. There's just even little details that I really appreciated in the episode, like the fact that when they return to Kamino, they play the same music and the same, motifs that played when Obi-Wan arrived at Kamino in Attack of the Clones. It's like the first and the last time we visit Kamino in Star Wars is when we hear that music. It adds kind of a symbolism to that, which I appreciated, because I hadn't thought about that until I heard it again, and I was filled with this feeling of nostalgia. I thought about the fact that I don't think they ever used that in the Clone Wars, or any of the other forms of media where Kamino has appeared. They only used it here in an Attack of the Clones, and I really like that they used it there. It just adds kind of a layer to it, which I really appreciated. And at first I was thinking, okay, their plan is kind of stupid, like they're just running in and they just for some reason think Crosshair won't predict them. But like, okay, I get that, maybe that's kind of what they were counting on, like Crosshair was counting on that, and everything kind of ends up working out for them. Well, I guess not really, but still, it all kind of was just part of the plan, I guess, so to speak. So that doesn't really bother me that much. I thought the destruction of Kamino was handled really well, with this kind of air of tragedy as they're running through the halls, and you see just all the rooms where we've seen just bustling with clones throughout the Clone Wars and Attack of the Clones, and you just see everything abandoned and empty, and this, this music starts to swell, and it's just this really, like, solemn, like, it's kind of sad music, but it's also kind of, like, happy at the same, if that makes sense. Like, it's this kind of, like, it's never good to say goodbye, but we all have to say goodbye eventually to these things, like to the clones, that's their home. And you just see the Bad Batch running through these empty corridors, just something about that just really hits, it hits you in the feels, it just, I thought that was really well handled, and then when the Empire destroys it, like they play this music that's almost like triumphant, but you don't feel triumphant. You don't feel happy. You just feel, you just feel crushed, Just really well handled in that regard as well. I loved seeing AZ again from the Fives arc. I love him. I loved seeing him again. Made me very happy. I'm always happy to see him. He had some great lines. He had some great moments. He saved Omega from one of the elite squad members, so that was cute. But like, yeah, just what a well done episode. And then the main thing I want to talk about, holy crap, the way they handled Crosshair. I loved that because it adds credence to everything that's come before in this season. all the adventures they've gone on, they could have gone back for him. When Hunter confronts him and says, you're all just, all this, it's just been you under the control of the chip. And Crosshair says, you left me behind, And Hunter says, we didn't have a choice. But Crosshair said, did I? Did I have a choice? Did you ever consider my perspective? Did you ever consider my position? And we know that Hunter did. We know that he did because in the 3rd episode, he admitted his guilt to Omega for leaving him behind. But all the adventures they went on with Sid, all the times they helped random people in need, that could have been Crosshair, but they never went back for him. They even helped someone who they considered to be the enemy, a separatist senator, but they never went back for their brother, for one of their own. That just... And you were meant to never think about that. From the perspective of the storytellers, from Dave Filoni, the writers, they wanted you not to think about that. The Batch hadn't thought about that, and they want you to think about that. They wanted you not to think about that as well, because Crosshair was absent from a lot of the show. Like, he made little appearances here and there, but we never really got to understand him personally, And we understood his position was that of, someone who was just being controlled, someone without free will. But as we discover, he actually did have free will the whole time. But despite that, they thought that his position was that of someone who had been deprived of that, and they never went back for him. Even now, they're rushing back immediately to save Hunter, but they never went back for him. And that just adds this layer of tragedy to it, just like Crosshair's, he's kind of like this tragic character. And I love the way they handled that with the nuance. Like the line when he's like, oh, they'll come for him. They don't leave their own behind most of the time. Like that line just, that digs deep, And when he speaks in his voice, you can just feel the sense of betrayal. When he says, don't become my enemy, you feel this sense of like betrayal. Like you really understand his position. But then he reveals to Hunter that, the inhibitor chip was removed from him and he stayed loyal to the Empire, but you can kind of understand that because the Empire looked out for him. They stayed loyal to him where he feels his brothers did not. And despite the fact that they're not, they're kind of corrupt. It's kind of like Thrawn, in the Thrawn trilogy. Thrawn says, tyranny is, a certain level of evil is necessary to keep balance in a time filled with such chaos. And obviously Crosshair's not putting that level of thought into it, but from his perspective, they stuck up for him, or not stuck up for him, but they did look out for him, and they kept him around. And the Bad Batch just, like, to him, it feels like the first chance they got, they left him behind, and they never looked back. And the way they handled that was just so well done, and it makes all those adventures they went on feel important, because you just think about Crosshair sitting there on Kamino, and you're like, shoot, like you never thought about him. You're always thinking about them and their perspective, and they've been looking out for each other. Like, the show has been all about them and this concept of what's their purpose, and that they need to look out for each other. And they left him behind. That from his perspective, they left him behind. But then you also see from his perspective that he sees himself, he has this sense of entitled superiority to some extent. He says to Hunter that we're superior beings. We're not like the regs. We're superior to them. We're superior beings, and we deserve to be kind of at the top of the food chain to some extent, right? He kind of has a Darth Vader moment where he's like, join me, And it's kind of like, okay, but would you have done that? Like, you're kind of thinking about it, like, he feels left behind, but part of you wants to go, would he have gone back for them? Like, what would you have done, Crosshair? Like, are you being a hypocrite right now? It's just so well written. It's so well done, because the Bad Batch, they want to look out for each other, like, they have this, and like, they want to put their abilities, their capabilities, their advancements, their superiority to good use. They want to look out for each other. But Crosshair wants to put that to the use of just domination to some extent, And I love the way they handle that, because it just, like, it does make everything feel more morally gray. It's not just Crosshair's evil, the Bad Batch good. Like, because no, like, they weren't really, like, they could have gone back for him at multiple points, but they never did. And then, first chance they get, they're running back for Hunter. They're stressing about Hunter. They're like, oh my god, we gotta go rescue Hunter. But never a second thought about Crosshair. You know, and it's just like, you really think about it, you're like, wow, they were pretty dismissive of him. And the way they wrote him in the show, I always thought, like, wow, they really didn't include Crosshair very much. They were always kind of throwing in these side antagonists like Cad Bane and stuff like that. But now you realize that it was all intentional, because from Crosshair's perspective, they wrote it so that he would have felt left behind. And the way they wrote him in the show was to be off to the sidelines, so that the characters and you, as the audience, wouldn't really think about him. You know, and then now we're finally seeing him open up, just put everything down on the table. And you just really understand his character. And just the way they handled him was so well done. I always found him interesting. I always found him to be a fascinating character. But now he's probably one of my favorite, like, Star Wars characters, maybe, like, of all time. Like, like, I guess you would call him an antagonist, because he kind of has acted as one. So, like, I guess he's one of my favorite Star Wars antagonists, but, like, yeah, it just amplifies so much of what's good about the show, and it adds so much to what's come before. And it makes everything that's come before feel important. It makes all the investment that you've put into the show feel worth it, at least to me. And, you know, I think that just any good show does that. And I think the way they handled everything with him was just so great. Just, man, great episode. Episode 15 might be my favorite of the show. Just hats off to the creative team on this one. Now, moving on to part 2 of the finale, we have episode 16, Camino Lost, the final episode of season 1. We made it. I'm kind of sad. But in terms of recapping this episode, there isn't really a lot to discuss in that department. It's a pretty simple episode plot-wise. It's mainly focused on the characters and their relationships with one another, and wrapping things up by the end of the story of, like, this season, and then kind of loosely setting things up for season 2, I suppose, a little bit at the end. But, you know, basically it just picks up right where the last one left off. Camino is being destroyed, the Bad Batch are still inside, and the episode is basically just them making their way out of the facility, with Crosshair tagging along, and then by the end, Crosshair saves Omega, and the Bad Batch head out, leaving Crosshair behind because, you know, he just kind of refuses to change. He's made his decision, he's going to stay with the Empire, and Nala Se gets inducted by the Empire, and the Empire is like, oh, we'll use you in the future. So, just talking about the episode, I really liked it. I don't understand some of the kind of I don't want to say hate, but I've seen people saying they were disappointed by this finale, and I don't really get that. You know, I think, you know, I didn't want to see a big cameo or a ton of action, you know. I wanted to see the story being wrapped up from the standpoint of the characters and their relationships with each other. And that's what we got. We got this tense escape from Camino, while the characters are coming into conflict over what the best decision is to be made. We see the characters using their abilities to their advantage, using their tactical capabilities to make their way out of a dire situation. I just really liked it, you know. So starting off just from the beginning, you know, I loved that Omega was just jumping in immediately to rescue Crosshair, despite everything, despite all the revelations that happened in the previous episode, the fact that they're still sticking their neck out for him. I love just the sense of dread as the episode picks up, you know, with the siren sound effects from Rogue One, underscoring the opening as Rampart overlooks the destruction of Camino. The music, the score by Kevin Kiner is brilliant throughout the entire episode. It gives this unsettling feel, but also is emotional and kind of, I guess, epic, I guess is the best word when it needs to be. You know, these particular episodes, the last few, have been amazing in terms of the score. Kevin Kiner is an amazing composer. But, you know, I really loved it. I loved that AZ has a larger role, too, and that he kind of makes a sacrifice by the end, you know, despite the fact that he does end up getting rescued. but still, like, just I loved the sense of dread throughout the whole thing, this dire situation that everyone's in, just the desperation of it. Crosshair still just believing in the Empire, just unwaveringly committed, when Hunter confronts him about it and says the fact that they left you for dead, Omega tried to rescue you, the Empire didn't, they left you for dead, and Crosshair is just still, despite the fact that the chip has been removed from his head, is still going on about how, soldiers follow orders and, the Empire did what had to be done. He's not giving up on it. He still believes that the Empire gave him purpose, and that's kind of, it's just like, I like the continual development in all these different forms of media, whether it be, the shows, the books. There's this constant development of the idea that not everyone within the Empire is within themselves evil. They don't all have evil or malicious intentions. Crosshair, I'm pretty sure it's obvious at this point that he got the chip removed after the 8th episode, because if you look at his actions past that point, they're far less obviously malevolent toward other people. And he gave his brothers a chance, and the fact is that they aren't going to give up on him. They're not going to give up on him, but, he still has this unwavering commitment to the Empire, and he feels like it's just something that gives him purpose in life. He feels like he needs to kind of be subservient to a larger force because it gives him purpose. Whereas the Bad Batch, they don't really have an interest in serving a larger force now. They look out for each other and they look out for themselves. They don't really even have interest in fighting the Empire. They aren't really interested in something like the Rebellion, I don't feel. They just want to look out for each other. They don't have an interest in fighting the Empire or anything like that. So I like that, Crosshair, it just comes down to the fact that rather than it being a matter of removing the chip or something like that, which is what we all thought it would be, some kind of external conflict between characters, trying to remove the chip, it all ended up being an internal conflict between characters and different perspectives. The idea that Crosshair, he does step in, he does save Omega with the grappling gun, he saves her and the droid, so he obviously has a heart. He obviously is not a completely malevolent, evil character, but he just has a different perspective. What Hunter says is, just because we want different things doesn't mean we have to be enemies. And Crosshair, I wonder what's going to happen past that point. Will he cover up for them? Perhaps, he's waiting on the landing platform after they leave, and they do bring up the fact that Imperial scouts will show up eventually, so he's going to wait for the Empire to find him there. But I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder if he'll cover up for them, if he'll say, I killed them and then I escaped, or something like that. Like, I wonder if he'll try and cover for them rather than go after them, because I feel like, they're accepting of that. Omega says to Crosshair by the end, they're your brother, like you're still their brother and you're my brother, and we will always accept you no matter what happens. They still rescued him, they stuck their neck out for him despite everything, despite his different perspectives, because they still care. And it's kind of like, I love that idea of family, because it's something that very much does connect with me on a personal level. With my family, like, we all have different perspectives. I'm sure that's the case with most families. Particularly my brother has very jarring different points of view than everyone else in my family, but we still love him, right? And there's a line from Tech in the middle of the episode where he says, it's just in Crosshair's nature to be like this. And then Crosshair says, why are you defending me? And he says, I'm not. Just because I say, or just because I understand you doesn't mean I agree with you. And that's just kind of, it really does feel like they are a family in a way, and that does connect with me personally, like, very much so, considering, like, all, like personal family ties, the idea of, you can always understand someone and that doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but you can understand them and accept their points of view. And that's the way that the Bad Batch operate with Crosshair. They don't kill him, they don't do anything bad with him. It's very obvious that from both sides, from the Bad Batch's perspective and Crosshair himself, they don't have any ill will towards each other. They don't wish ill upon each other. They just have different perspectives, So I don't feel like Crosshair in future is going to go after them or anything like that. I feel like he simply just has a different perspective. He feels like the Empire gives him purpose. The Bad Batch don't. They feel like what gives them purpose in life is going on their own, carving their own path, discovering their own path, and looking out for each other. And at this point, Crosshair just feels like, the Empire gives him purpose. He feels like he needs purpose. He needs to be subservient to something else, but the Bad Batch don't feel that way. I really loved that. I loved that by the end of it, the conflict between the Bad Batch and Crosshair didn't devolve into we have to remove the chip or something external. It ended up all being internal, and it became, to me, very relatable, and it connected with me on a very personal and emotional level. There were a lot of points where I almost teared up when AZ tried to sacrifice himself, to try and save Omega. And when Crosshair, or when Omega turns to Crosshair and says, you're my brother, as well. I felt like this served as a perfect, climax for the characters and for the themes of the show, or the themes of this season at least. And yeah, I really loved the way they concluded things. There's kind of a little bit of an extra moment at the end where Nala Se shows up on, I forget what that planet's called, a Duro, I think. And there's some Imperial scientist, and they're like, "Oh, we have great plans for you in the future," and it kind of ends, and there's some crazy music from Kevin Kiner that plays, and it's like, so it's that's kind of the one moment where it feels like setup, but it's not like some kind of obligatory, annoying Marvel type setup where they have to basically dedicate the entire end of the episode to setup. It's just kind of like hinting at the fact that this character is still in operation. We're probably going to get some more continuation of the plot line with whatever the Kaminoans were planning, whatever Lama Su is planning, and we're going to kind of get some more stuff with Nala Se in the future that'll continue into season 2. There are loose hanging threads, but the fact that there is a second season does make me believe that characters and plot lines will continue in the future. And I really wonder what they're going to do. I want to see what will happen. I'm looking forward to season 2. This finale really did serve, I felt, as a good conclusion to this season, and does, set my expectations high, or does, give me that sense of excitement for the future seasons of the show. If there are indeed more than just one season coming up, if there are more, I will continue to watch, and I'm looking forward to seeing them. I felt it was a perfect finale on a character level. I don't believe that I felt that part 1 was just great. Part 1 was the best episode of the season by far. This doesn't quite live up to that, because the plot of it is very simplistic. There's not a lot to break down there. But on a character level, it was a perfect conclusion to the season, and I loved the way it was executed. Now, with that said, in terms of what I'm planning on making in the future related to the show, I'm going to do a live stream very soon with my friend, who I also did a live stream with, talking about and doing a retrospective kind of on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier's first season. So I'm going to do that with him as well. I'm going to do a live stream with him discussing the first season of The Bad Batch and what we think is going to happen in the future, just like we did for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So stay tuned for that. And I'm also going to be working on a very large project, which I'm not going to reveal quite yet. I think a couple of you already know if you were tuned into my Slave 1 build live stream, but I'm working on a very large project. I'll reveal that in the live stream with my friend. So stay tuned for that. But you guys, please let me know. What are your thoughts on the finale of The Bad Batch? Do you feel it ended everything well? Do you feel like it was underwhelming? Just whatever your thoughts are, please let me know them all in the comments below. And of course, as always, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.